With Vince Russo back on the scene in wrestling, it has inspired me to talk about a really weird faction from his final spell in TNA. The origins of this faction come from a deep, filthy, dark place. Vince Russo's ass. No, in the history of TNA. They were struggling financially and had just lost long-time talents AJ Styles, Sting, Hogan and Christopher Daniels. Vince Russo had secretly been writing for TNA against Spike TV's wishes, and he had one more unforgettable storyline to give us before he got busted. TNA had just finished the Aces and Eights faction storyline, which quite literally lasted a year and a half, and everybody was fed up with the show. Former WWE ECW wrestler Mike Knox had been cleverly rebranded as Mike Nux and had been a foot soldier in the Aces and Eights faction, but his involvement had been forgettable and quite irrelevant. Nobody really cared about poor old Nux, he was just kind of there. When the group disbanded, he quietly disappeared from TNA and nobody even noticed. He had failed. It wasn't the sort of fail people laughed at, it was the sort of fail that nobody could possibly ever remember. TNA was doing fine without him. Which is why when he resurfaced in March 2014, everybody was shocked that he would now be getting his very own storyline for some reason. For a couple of months, TNA aired weekly footage on what was going on in the world of Mike Nux. He had apparently returned home to his family's carnival. The most depressing carnival that I have ever seen. And trust me, I've been to Breen Sands. His dad could no longer run the carnival, and Nux revealed, get this, that his dad, the carnival owner, apparently looked down on Nux for wanting to be a professional wrestler. Try and make that one make sense. So there's some sort of rift between these two characters. Over the next couple of weeks, the storyline would expand. The carnival was struggling apparently due to a flood. Here we would also be introduced to a woman called Rebel, who Nux dated when they were kids. As she tries to give us a heartfelt story about why the carnival is struggling and all the poor workers who have to put up with being here, you just can't help but wonder, were those shorts really a sensible choice for this type of conversation? Who goes around dressed like that? Before she was known as Rebel, she was introduced to wrestling audiences as Tenea. Hilariously, she pushed behind the scenes for her character to be called Tianea, but sadly this one failed. All of the game's machines are broken, and Nux isn't capable of fixing this many machines all on his own. Rebel almost bursts into tears as she explains how hard they've been struggling whilst he's been trying to be a wrestler. The whole time dramatic music plays. She tells him to meet with his failure of a father. The dad shows him around a room of crap and tells Nux he did all of this for him. Gee, thanks dad. He is worried about all the staff at this carnival who are going to be put out of a job. Nux and Rebel appear to grow closer as the weeks go by, with Nux revealing he's proud of her fire juggling skills. Despite that, he can't stay at the circus forever because his heart is in wrestling. She makes the decision to come with him to Impact Wrestling. So just like that, they both abandon the circus, which had been the most important thing in their lives just a few weeks earlier, and now they had gone to be wrestlers. I guess the old man and the people who work there can just piss off. Their car journey to TNA is a thing of legend, as it produced some of the most memorable lines in this storyline. Nux decided to change her name from Tenea to Rebel, and they will also be bringing Crazy Steve and the Freak with them.
And I don't need Tenea. I need Rebel in my corner.
Oh, you're gonna get Rebel. You're gonna get all the Rebel you can handle.
Crazy Steve and the Freak.
No. We're not Crazy Steve. He's crazy. And the Freak absolutely freaking not. No.
Listen.
Nux.
The plan is somehow the four of them wrestling will make money for the carnival. And as soon as they make it to TNA, somehow things get wackier and wackier. Rebel juggles fire, which is quite impressive, and shows off her ass as a forklift brings a gigantic comedy crate into the impact zone. A horn keeps tooting as Mike Knox tells us that this crate is their home. The crate splits apart and out comes a giant masked man and Crazy Steve. Nux beams with happiness. Rebel doesn't think this is a good idea. Well, at least someone has some sense around here. Time for the ring debut of this group. They have been named the Menagerie. Crazy circus music plays. Two morons on stilts just kind of stand around watching them. Rebel juggles two sticks. I guess they weren't allowed to bring fire into the impact zone, that's a bit disappointing. Crazy Steve debuts for TNA, and also the Freak Rob Terry in his latest gimmick, a mask to cover his ugly face. Nux is just the guy. He walks along. He could have at least made some effort and dressed up as a circus ringleader. Mike Knox has a foot fetish. Then Rebel does the splits on the ropes, which is somehow the most impressive thing that anybody in this group ever did. Taz is screaming, and the camera keeps fast cutting around the building. This will be a match between Frankie the Future Kazarian and Mike Nux. Nux does a crossbody in this match and rolls around on the floor cackling. Frankie loses this one in about 2 minutes to a powerbomb. The Menagerie are off to winning ways and they all take a bow. Poor Kaz wasn't finished either with this group, as the Future was forced to face Crazy Steve the following week in his TNA debut. This match would feature Crazy Steve giving Kaz balloons. For some reason, their Crazy Menagerie Circus music plays the entire match like it's a New Jack match. Sounds like fun? It isn't. Rob Terry pushes Kaz over while Steve is bent over behind him. The Freak does delt presses with Crazy Steve. Steve splashes onto a pile of balloons in the ring for absolutely no reason. Taz can barely speak, he's laughing so much. The Freak is rocking back and forwards on the apron. Rebel is hanging upside down from the ring ropes. Steve pulls down the referee's leg holders, and then just like that, Kaz wins the match by DQ. This would also go on to be the final TNA match of Kazarian for a very long time. This was one of the most bizarre TNA matches of all time, and I can think of a few of them. Despite the elaborate build towards this faction, the months of backstory, the big entrance, the decent amount of TV time they got, the first feud for the Menagerie was a feud with the BroMans. Are you ready for this incredible storyline? Robbie E, now known as Robert Stone in the WWE, was scared of clowns. Well, I better say it or else someone will yell at me. Robbie E is a clown. The BroMans hadn't actually done anything to the Menagerie, they just enjoyed trolling them for some reason. This led to a horrible in-ring argument between the two teams who weren't really over. The BroMans kept blowing their DJ horn and Crazy Steve kept responding with his real horn. This entire segment gives me a headache. The crowd keep chanting "She is sexy" at Rebel. Everybody is annoyed. For once, Rob Terry is the man to improve a segment as he picks up Zema Ion and just sort of carries him around for about a minute whilst his partners do nothing to help him. Eventually all of the BroMans are thrown from the ring. It was a strange choice to bring this new team in instantly to have them feud with jobbers, because that also makes them jobbers by association. They continued playing the Menagerie's music all throughout their matches. It kind of works for them when the circus acts are in control of the match, but it doesn't feel right when the heels are doing stuff.
Uh-oh, Crazy Steve just the music's going, it's the lights up, it's crazy in here. Nutty.
Crazy Steve, he's up in the apron, he's got the...
Every time they won a match, Mike Tenay points out that there would be more cash for their carnival now. These truly are some of the strangest wrestling matches. How did Robert Stone recover from this stuff? Anyway, as the weeks went by, the Menagerie's elaborate entrance started to get scaled down, or sometimes the entrance was entirely cut. Nux was even the first man eliminated from a battle royal. It's crazy how quickly Russo and the other writers soured on this storyline. Weeks went by without a single appearance by any of the Menagerie members. But what about the circus and the workers' families? And your dad, Nux? Who's keeping all of those guys afloat? We would never actually see the carnival again, and Taz would make fun of how disgusting the carnival looked and how stupid it was that Nux was wrestling to pay for the carnival. Your plan is failing, Nux. By the way, it took forever for Rebel to even have a match, and we all know how she turned out. She made her TNA debut in a Velvet Sky special, losing of course. 1 week after making her debut, she was in a battle royal where she managed to fracture her arm through getting eliminated. It's a real shame for several reasons, and not just because you don't want to see someone get hurt. But she actually made it to the final 3 in this match, perhaps showing that TNA did have some plans for her, and she was without a doubt the only member of this faction anybody cared about. While she was gone, they continued to not get booked. Great job getting injured, Rebel. Now how are you going to pay your workers? Talking of workers, Rob Terry was let go from TNA as they continued to struggle to afford the Welsh Roiders' needle addiction. He only wrestled 2 matches on the main show under the Freak gimmick, so that was pointless. Rebel returned and the Menagerie continued feuding with the BroMans, the Beautiful People. There was no real reason for this feud other than just because it was 2 mixed teams who could fight each other. TNA then decided to let Mike Knox go, and that really was where the story ends. We would eventually get closure on the Menagerie around 13 months after their debut during a women's tag match in 2015. Can I just say, having Brooke and Rebel as a tag team is worth mentioning on its own. But the real bombshell here is that Mike Tenay tells us that the Menagerie have gone back to circus life. You know, the broken down, depressing circus filled with a room of smashed up broken machines. And a dad who I'm pretty sure was on suicide watch. You've just got to hope that the Menagerie made enough money from their 7 matches together to support all the families under their employment. Crazy Steve and Rebel would actually both do okay following the Menagerie. Okay, well, Rebel would mostly do okay following the Menagerie. The Welsh Roider is retired and went back to his homeland, and to this day he still claims to be natural. Mike Knox can still be found to this day in wrestling for the National Wrestling Alliance. So his poor dad was fucked because you all ditched him. That poor bastard is probably still sat in that depressing room trying to fix his machines and riding his sad pony to work every day. This faction was downright bizarre. So much effort went into it only for it to be abandoned almost straight away. And if you don't agree with that, the Hawk will make you pay.